Welcome back to Why Walking Matters, the Science Explained. I'm Tatiana, your host. If you're a new listener, welcome to the podcast. And if you're a loyal listener, welcome back. It's vacation season, and last week we explored walking vacations around the world and discovered how walking can become much more than exercise. It can be a way to experience a destination, connect with a culture, and create unforgettable memories. From historic trails and mountain paths to coastal routes and charming villages, we saw that some of the best travel experiences can happen one step at a time. One walking journey that came up during that discussion was the Camino de Santiago in Spain, perhaps the most famous walking pilgrimage in the world. For centuries, people have walked the Camino for reasons that range from religious devotion and personal reflection to adventure, challenge, or simply a desire to slow down and see the world differently. Today, we're going to take a closer look at the Camino through the eyes of someone many of you may already know, renowned chef, humanitarian, and founder of World Central Kitchen, José Andrés. In a powerful article published by Outside Magazine, Andres reflects on his experience walking the Camino de Santiago and shares what he learned along the way, not just about Spain, but about community, generosity, purpose, and the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other. So, whether you've dreamed of walking the Camino yourself, or like me, you're simply curious about why this ancient route continues to inspire so many people, settle in as we explore Jose Andres's moving account of one of the world's great walking journeys. Here's a tip: listen while you walk. From outsideonline.com, Jose Andres and the Wisdom of the Walk. One of the world's most famous humanitarians has spent decades feeding millions in the wake of disaster via World Central Kitchen. Now, on an ancient pilgrimage across Spain's Camino de Santiago, he is learning how to carry the weight of the universe one step at a time. Somewhere around kilometer 3, Jose Andres stepped off the trail and crouched beside an old oak tree. He pressed his hand against the bark. I wasn't sure why. And then he said, "North." You could always tell by the moss, he explained, thicker on the north-facing side, where the bark stays damp, the south side dried by the sun. Patricia had noticed the same thing on one of their previous walks and pointed it out to him. She does it on every walk, he said, with the same wonder as if seeing it for the first time. Patricia had not broken stride. She was already 30 meters ahead, following the yellow arrow painted on the next fence post. She did not look back. She has been walking with this man for a long time. We were on the Camino de Santiago on a Thursday morning in September, not far from a small town called Bamonde in the verdant, rain-soaked region of Galicia. The Camino is an ancient pilgrimage route which contains more than 1,500 miles of pathways across Europe and was walked by more than 500,000 people in 2025 alone. Jose had invited me along 4 days earlier. He has walked the Camino several times before. This year's walk, their fourth together, was special. It was to celebrate his and Patricia's 30th wedding anniversary. You are along for the ride, Patricia had told me, the Jose train. You hop on and you don't always know where it's going. I'd briefly been on the Jose train before. Chicago, Beard Awards weekend, 2022. Tacos became mezcal shots, which became a FaceTime with the mezcal's maker so Jose could tell him I'd enjoyed it. The maker looked like he'd just been woken up. When Jose calls, you answer. The next stop was a party, no sitting, just selfies and hugs and handshakes. We went to a restaurant next. He made sure to sit at the bar, always the bar, for the conversation and the ability to move. The stillness is measured in minutes. The world does not slow down for Jose, and yet here he was, hand pressed against the bark of a Galician oak tree, trying to do exactly that. 1. Villalba, the night before. The Parador de Villalba is a set of stone buildings and a medieval stone tower in the middle of a small Galician town. Many of the walls here seem to be 4 feet thick. The floorboards creak. It feels right that José Andrés is sleeping here. I arrived in the early evening after a long drive from Madrid and through the interior of Galicia, the green, Atlantic-kissed corner of Spain, where the final stretch of the Camino de Santiago is laid out past wind turbines and ends at the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela. Galicia has a way of looking like the Irish countryside, but with Albarino. When I see Jose in the lobby, he moves swiftly toward the kitchen through the swinging door. As he comes back, a few guests grab photos with him and wish him buen camino, the customary greeting for those on the trail. He's bullish in stature, white-bearded, white-haired, dressed all in gray, hooded mid-layer pants, sneakers. Sensible, like a dad on vacation who's ready for the hike. Or, in this case, a food crawl. He'd asked the chef for a caldo gallego, a hearty stew of white beans, turnips, and de lacon, the cured pork shoulder that gives the broth its depth, a dish that has fueled pilgrims and farmers through Galician winters for centuries. He suspected it was too early in the season. He wanted it anyway. Hang out enough with Jose, and you start to believe you can eat your way through an entire culture if you know where to look and who to ask. Are you hungry? Let's eat, he says. We settle on a restaurant across the square, sitting on stools next to an old barrel, with a plate of Raxo between us. Pork loin cut into slivers, tossed in garlic and paprika, tipped onto fried potatoes. Then orejas, pig's ears skewered on toothpicks. They are soft, then crunch. They arrive, of course, on a bed of potatoes. Always potatoes in Galicia, he tells me. Jose orders white wine. I have what he's having. Tichi, he shouts, Tichi. Tichi is what he calls Patricia, and has for 30 years as of this Camino. She crosses the square to join us. They've been on the Camino for 10 days already, she tells me, starting up the coast in Asturias and working their way west. She has planned most of the route. Everybody walks for a different reason, he says. To be away from problems, to find something. One thing is being a pilgrim. Another is being a walker. He is doing both, he thinks, though he admits the line is not always clear. What separates the Camino from any other long walk, he says, is that the road has history. Every town, every place, something happened. Maybe somebody met there. Maybe it was a war or a fight. And you feel that. Patricia is very strict about which kilometers count, Jose tells me. He spotted a beach off the trail one of the early days. 3 kilometers round trip to see it. Patricia does not count it. El Camino is El Camino, he says, echoing her. It is very straight, and she doesn't count that shit. Patricia shrugs. She has heard this complaint before. She will hear it again. We walk and eat more than anybody, he says. My wife is always afraid. She says we should cancel the walk and just do a gastronomic history of Spain. This is my point, Patricia says to me. We need to walk because of how much we eat. We try a few more places in town in search of the soup. He sees one man eating a hamburger and says in Spanish, "Why are you eating a hamburger in Galicia?" No soup. Eventually, he gives up and we head back. Patricia sensibly goes to bed. But Jose asks if I'm hungry, which I have come to understand means he wants to hang. We grab a table at the hotel restaurant. We're some of the last people there. I ask him, why the Camino? Why every year this? We get away from people, he says. Nobody bothers you. Once you pass through the towns, you're on your own, especially here. He gestures at the stone walls around us, at Galicia. To be out here, nothing is more honest, you know. He gets soup, a simple chicken noodle, all they had. Not the soup he wanted, but it is still a soup, homemade, and the broth was real. I would spend the next 2 days watching him do this, adapting, redirecting, finding the best of what was here, and when it wasn't quite there, nudging it with a dash of salt or vinegar or oil toward what he wished it were. The caldo gallego would wait. A waiter said goodbye on her way out and asks for a selfie and tells him he was one of the personalities on her Spanish citizenship test. Jose, a dual citizen of Spain and the United States, doesn't quite know what to do with this, so he smiles. We order local whiskey as nightcaps. Outside, the tower of the Parador is lit amber against the dark. In the morning, we walk, he says. 2. To be a walker. If you don't know the man ahead of me with a walking stick, let's catch you up. He has won multiple James Beard Awards, including Humanitarian of the Year. He is the founder of José Andrés Group, which operates more than 40 restaurants and bars across the country, from Minibar in Washington, D.C. to Jaleo in Las Vegas. His newest book, Spain My Way, is a love letter to the food of his home country. He came from Spain to the U.S. in his 20s, but not before serving in the Spanish Navy, where he traveled the world and cooked for admirals, and a life-changing stint at El Bulli, the birthplace of molecular gastronomy. But the restaurant empire is almost an asterisk now, albeit a sparkling one. In 2010, after the earthquake in Haiti, Jose Andres did what he does. He showed up, he cooked, he fed. What began as one chef's refusal to stand idly by became World Central Kitchen, WCK, the humanitarian organization that has since deployed to most major disasters of the past 16 years: hurricanes, wildfires, floods, wars, applying restaurant-scale logistics to the problem of feeding people. He says the organization has served more than 150 million meals in Gaza alone. 7 of his workers were killed there in an Israeli airstrike in 2024, a loss he still carries. He has testified before Congress about aid in Ukraine. He has appeared in his own Marvel comic. He has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. He can go from a conversation about canning technology to a quiet fury about the cuts to Ukraine aid to a childhood memory of keeping a fire alive. The Spanish have a word for what he embodies, sobremesa, literally over the table, the time after a meal when the conversation deepens and the real things get said. Jose Andres lives in permanent sobremesa. The Camino, I would come to understand, is his version of it on foot. One long, moving feast of conversation, food, and presence, stretched across days. It is a steadiness, path, arrows, one foot and then the next, that his life will otherwise not permit. And here in Galicia, away from the kitchens in Gaza, Ukraine, and his wife is making him walk. Before we walked, we ate. In the mornings, this time of year, there's a heavy scent of petrichor, that distinct after the rain smell, even when it hasn't rained, or has it? The Cafe Bar a Rotonda sits at the edge of Bamonde, where the yellow arrows finally come into focus, the hand-painted markers pilgrims have followed across northern Spain for more than 1,000 years. Patricia went inside to get her pilgrim's passport stamped, 2 stamps a day, collected from churches and bars and hostels along the way. Jose watched her go and said something about Patricia being very serious about the stamps and himself being very serious about the tortilla. Patricia is the true walker of the duo. Most mornings back in Bethesda, Maryland, she's on the Potomac, walking the trail toward Great Falls. It was there, years ago, that one of their 3 daughters first spotted a pawpaw, North America's largest native fruit, custardy and tropical, a thing most Americans never taste. She saw it because her mother had taught her on all those mornings to look down. The tortilla española at the rotunda was properly made, thick, barely set, the eggs still soft at the center. The potatoes were glossed with the olive oil they were cooked in. In Galicia, which produces extraordinarily good eggs and extraordinarily good potatoes, 2 facts Jose is happy to point out: a well-made tortilla is something worth seeking out and planning a morning around. We ate with strong coffee while pilgrims and locals, the 2 communities that have shared this trail for centuries, trickled in. The pilgrims walked in loose, then unhurried gait of people who had been on the road for weeks. Jose watched one of them, a man in boots and walking poles, order a coffee at the bar. "You don't need to ask," he said. "You know who they are." Then quieter, "They are somewhere else already." 3. What the trail knows. The Camino del Norte, the Northern Way, is the coastal route of the Camino de Santiago, the path most traveled in the 9th and 10th centuries. Pilgrims arrived by sea from northern Europe and walked westward along the Bay of Biscay to Galicia. It has sneaky elevation changes and long, sometimes unshaded stretches, the hiking equivalent of death by 1,000 paper cuts. But you quickly realize the beauty of the walk, religious or not, leaving a world, through a world, toward a world. Follow the arrows. Out of Bamonde toward Gurturis, the trail moves through a countryside where you will come across stone bridges, stone fences, stone churches. We stop at Capella de San Alberte, an ancient structure furred in moss. Nearby stand the cruceros, weathered stone crosses with Jesus on one side, the Virgin Mary on the other. You only see them in Galicia. Patricia explains they were placed as waymarks, like the Camino's arrows, but also to protect travelers, spiritual and navigational guidance in one, not unlike Patricia herself. Nearby are blackberry brambles. Jose picks a handful of ripe blackberries, eats them, and passes some to Patricia. As we walk on, he puts his walking stick across his shoulders and talks about what is in season along the trail. Chestnuts. The first ones are just coming ready, he says. Madroños, the red meaty berries whose tree appears on the coat of arms of Madrid, a bear reaching into its branches. Grapes, and in a few weeks after the autumn rains, mushrooms. I pick them, but I need to be very sure, he said. Some of them are poisonous, but usually I know. I'm good at it, but nothing like the locals. His grandfather was a hunter and a fisherman, a man who tied his own fishing flies and cast his own cartridges, who gathered bird feathers to make lures. When his mother moved, Jose kept his grandfather's old lures. His grandfather had taught him to catch trout barehanded in fast moving streams, getting in behind the rock where the fish sheltered from the current, waiting, then pow, grabbing them by the gills. If you're very quick, he said, you grab it and then get them out. The outdoors is the ultimate classroom, he said. Any child can come and become an expert on things. That's why all these fishermen and shepherds have so much wisdom. Beneath the white hair and waterfall of ideas, you get the sense that on these walks, Jose is still the boy at the stream, not yet the shepherd, still hoping to become one. 4. The 20-minute meal. A few days before I joined them, Jose and Patricia had walked a day with two pilgrims from New Zealand. The men were shepherds back home. They walked all day. They ate lunch together. At the end of the day, Jose drove them to their shelter, a donativo albergue, one of the donation-based shelters scattered along the route off the main road. When they arrived, a woman was in the kitchen. She was Mexican. She cooked for the pilgrims every day, she explained, room and board in exchange for meals. No salary, just food and a place to sleep. He looked at the kitchen. He looked at the progress of the meal. There wasn't much. He looked at what he had in the car, a bag of fresh beans he'd bought that morning at a market, a few tins of conservas. There were pilgrims to feed. There was a kitchen. There were 20 minutes. The woman didn't know who he was. Some of the other pilgrims did. He offered his services and his food. She looked at him. She looked at the clock. I don't think you're going to make it in 20 minutes, she told him. He told her, so I think I'm your best chance. He went to work. He opened the tins, conservas, the Spanish preserved fish that is its own culinary category, the good kind, in small flat cans with fish laid out the way a jeweler arranges stones. A first course. The pilgrims looked at each other. They told him they had never had a first course on the Camino. It was always just one plate. The fresh beans went into a pressure cooker. On the stovetop, they'd take half an hour. He didn't have half an hour. 5 minutes on the pressure, then the long hissing wait for all the steam to release, the cooker doing its work while the clock kept running and the pilgrims watched. The woman who had doubted him watched. He opened it. The beans were amazing, he said. Plus, there was no other option. It was fave season. For a few weeks each September, before the rest of the harvest went into sacks to dry for fabada, Asturias' national dish, a slow-cooked bean stew with pork and chorizo. You could buy them fresh at the markets, still in their pods. Fresh faves are a different animal. They cook in minutes instead of hours. They don't taste like a bean. They taste green, almost sweet. The skin's like a whisper. Jose had grown up on these beans. He had been born in Asturias. He had bought this bag at a market that morning without a plan for what to do with them. And then an albergue had appeared, and a Mexican woman cooking with not enough time and 20 minutes and a pressure cooker. The woman who had doubted him was delighted. Jose called her brave, someone doing quiet, essential work, in a place no one would think to look for it. The shepherds had walked hundreds of kilometers. They had slept in bunk beds in rooms full of strangers, carried what they needed on their backs, and on a random night in Asturias, an unannounced man turned 20 minutes and a bag of beans into a meal they will tell people about for the rest of their lives. 5. Sustenance. We reached Courtois around midday, about 10 kilometers of walking behind us. A Galician spa town built around a century-old thermal hotel and 3 medicinal springs. It was less than Jose's usual Camino pace, but it was the point today. He had decided was not kilometers. We wandered, looking for a bar or a cafe. We found Bar Kamba not far from the river. It had a television tuned to the news, a foosball table under a faded poster of Nighthawks, beige tables with red vinyl seats, a back room with checkered cloths where 2 lone walkers were already eating, and a bar, metal, utilitarian. With Jose, if there's a bar, you sit at the bar. Jose ordered for all of us. What arrived was simple: chicken wings atop a heap of fresh cut potatoes. Always potatoes here. A lentil soup, then bacalao, con cauliflower, cod, and cauliflower. Jose is not into shared plates, too fussy. Just eat. He handed out spoons and we dug in. A bottle of house white appeared, turbio, cloudy and young and slightly sparkling, served icy cold in squat stemless glasses. Jose stared at the salt, cod, and cauliflower with reverence. Super sophisticated, he said, like it's a sophisticated dish. Cauliflower, codfish, potatoes. Try to get this anywhere else. There was just enough play in the texture of each component. The cod debrined but still flaked, silky with moisture, the cauliflower holding its nuttiness, the potatoes supple. The magic weaving through it all was a paprika red ajada, the garlicky olive oil that is one of the pillars of Galician cooking, pooled at the bottom of the dish like a second sauce. Whatever date you have, commit to less and enjoy it more, Jose said between bites. Don't try to do 30 kilometers a day. Do 10, 15. That's plenty. He noticed older men gathering at a table for a card game and asked them what they were playing. Tooted, they said. His eyes went to Patricia. She was already shaking her head. He looked at the card players. He looked at Patricia. He stood up and told the men he would be back next year. There is no version of Jose's restaurant empire, not minibar, not Jalea, not anywhere, that could have produced this particular afternoon. Damn good cheap wine and the luck of finding a spot with sustenance when you really needed it. Show up, keep moving forward, be ready to receive the world. Our plates were empty, the bottle was finished. You really have so many meals left in your life, you know. 6. The phone in his pocket. We walked out of Guitariz in the afternoon, into the afternoon. The trail climbed through a mix of pine and chestnut trees. You could hear chestnuts knocking through the canopy, Galicia's percussion. I remarked how they looked like sea urchins. Jose was surprised I'd never seen a raw chestnut, though I'd somehow eaten plenty of sea urchin. He picked one up, opened it with his pocket knife, and handed me the kernel to taste. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at it. He held the screen out to me. It was a photograph from his team in Gaza, a new community kitchen going up, pots stacked on the floor, stoves getting wired in. WCK measures these kitchens in pots. A small one starts with 7. Every day I get photos, he said. Every day. Jose has 1.3 million followers on Instagram. When he posts a photo from a WCK kitchen, it moves money and attention, which is why the photos he gets every day are also a problem. Posts them, and people accuse him of covering up the war. Don't post, and no one knows anyone is being fed. I'm not covering up anything, he said. I'm only saying that this is happening, and all the realities are real. Gaza, Ukraine, it was a lot to carry. That's why I need to walk more than ever, he said. He put the phone back in his pocket. Just follow the arrows. At the end, there is a cathedral. It's the only operation José Andrés runs that does not require him to improvise in the face of catastrophe. I try to live multiple lives on the same life, he said, which is a curse and a blessing. The Camino is not where he escapes those lives. It's where he tries very hard to feel all of them at once without being crushed by the weight. You want to be disconnected, he said, but you need to be connected because in case something happens. Days earlier, he had taken a call in the middle of the trail about how to keep funding the meals in Gaza. That conversation would turn into a crucial meeting weeks later. Walkers are more important than talkers, he said. That's the biggest thing. 7. Going back. By late afternoon, we reached Taberna de Modia, a small tavern at the side of the trail. Jose talked to the owners at length about their eggs, their tortilla, their cider. Before we left, the owner mentioned, almost as an aside, that their tortilla was made fresh every morning. Jose turned to Patricia. She was already looking at him. He told the owner he would come back the next morning to try it. The owner nodded with the polite skepticism of someone who has heard pilgrims make promises before. Pilgrims move on. That is what they do. The next morning, we went back. This required retracing a portion of the previous day's route. The trail at that hour was quiet and cold. Just before the taberna, the road turns into an old Roman road, worn smooth by millennia of feet, hooves, and cartwheels. Jose stopped and looked at the smoothed out stones for a moment before moving on. The tortilla at Taberna de Modia was good, rustic, the kind that arrives at the table large enough for everyone and then some, the center creamy and wobbly, the outside browned just enough to hold the thing together. Jose cut into it and didn't say anything for a moment. In Galicia, when the tortilla is right, the silence is the compliment. This is why he's treated like a saint wherever he goes in Spain, not because of the awards or the organization or the congressional testimony, because he remembers that someone got up and made it. 8. Poetry. By the end of the day, we had walked close to 16 kilometers. Jose was quiet in a way he hadn't been all day. Then he took out his phone. He played a song through the small speaker. Jose sang along to parts. You could tell that he had known this song for a long time. He showed me the lyrics. Caminante son tus suelas, el camino y nada más. Caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar. Al andar se hace el camino y al volver la vista atrás. Se ve la senda que nunca se ha de volver a pisar. Caminante, no hay camino, sino estelas en la mar. The song is Cantares, based on the poem Caminante, no hay camino. Roughly, traveler, there is no road. Written by Antonio Machado in 1912. Joan Manuel Serrat set it to music in the late 1960s, popularizing the poem. It is about walking. It is about the nature of a path, Jose tells me. He translated his favorite line. Wonder, he said, there is no path. The path is made by walking. He let that sit for a moment. I walk, he said, and when you keep walking, you never get lost. Eventually, you get to the place. It's not about getting there, it's about going. He and Patricia were planning to do the whole Camino the following year, from Saint Jean Pied de Port in France over the Pyrenees across the full width of Spain. 60 days minimum. No support car, no bags shuttle ahead, just walking. The longest meal of his life. I asked if he could put the phone away for that long. You put it down for a few hours, he said. You pick it back up. You put it down again. Eventually, you have walked to Santiago. That's the whole thing. He smiled and shrugged. The smile of a man who knows it's impossible. The shrug of a man who's going to do it anyway. After Haiti, after Ukraine, after Gaza, he knows that time is the one thing you cannot pressure cook. You either take the 60 days or you don't. If I don't do it now, he said, I don't know if I'll do it ever again. Patricia was already a few steps ahead. She didn't look back. She has been walking with this man for a long time. He followed.
Thank you for joining me today for this reading of José Andrés' Reflections on the Camino de Santiago. Whether you're considering walking the Camino yourself or simply looking for inspiration to take more walks closer to home, I hope this story served as a reminder that every journey begins with a single step. If you enjoyed this episode, be kind, share with a friend. And as always, keep walking, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.